All right, we are live in the D with Mr. BB. We are joined today by Mr. David Taylor, who is a creative professional, author, and educator. His his motto is powerful, perceptive, and practical. Don't complain, create, helping authors win. David Taylor is an award-winning top 10 selling author. He founded Authors at Last, an online masterclass curriculum site. It's designed to help aspiring authors get started in motion authors get finished, and seasoned authors get better. He has had success as a poet, a top 10 songwriter, an award winning playwright, and a national commercial producer. His recent releases, his book is Diary of a Smart Black Kid, sixth grade, and his music, song Get Your Praise On, and Creator and I Shall Not Die. And he's joining us here today on Live in the D with Mr. BB to talk about his book and his many other talents. How are you doing today, Mr. David?
I'm fine. I'm fine. How are you? Thank you so much for having me on.
You're welcome. Thank you for coming on, and we're good. So that was a little bit, but if you can give us some insight to a little bit more about yourself and how you got started into all of your, some of your ventures, if not all of them.
Well, I see it as setting goals on different levels. And so everything that we have as humans is a calling.
Right.
So the spiritual goal should be able to find out your identity. That's in your spiritual life, find out exactly who it is that you are. And that's what feeds everything else. So once you see kind of who it is that you are, then naturally what you're supposed to do flows out of that. And my thing is I work with words. So whether I'm writing a song, whether I'm writing a book, whether I'm writing a play, my thing is words and communication. And so all of these things I've been doing since I was very, very little.
Mm-hmm.
But then when I became an adult, I launched out to do them professionally. So that's kind of, kind of a overview. There's a lot of battles and challenges along the way. And, I didn't just walk into it. But
Yes, absolutely. How did you get into some of it? Like, how did you get into, like you say, you treat it all as kind of one thing with your music and the writing and even the playwrights, but how did you get into writing in this creative space as a whole?
I started getting feedback and I started winning awards. Like when I was in school, I won a poetry award for what I was doing. And even when I was in high school, I won a scholarship for my creative writing. And when I started producing music, my very first gig out of school was a national commercial with McDonald's. I did the Brother Bear. They had a Happy Meal campaign,
Mm-hmm.
and I produced that commercial. It was a long time ago. This is like 2003. But if you remember, I don't know if you saw it, it's a long time ago, but it's when Private Jessica Lynch came home. They were interviewing her on ABC, and that's when my commercial first started to run. And I'm running around the house screaming, I like my commercials on TV. So when I did stuff, I got a lot of positive feedback, got a lot of opportunities right out of school. And that's life kind of showing you the direction you're supposed to go in.
Right.
And so then I spent a lot of time trying to get reorganized, because when you are doing multiple ventures, as you know, each one of them takes a lot of time and energy and focus.
Yes.
And unless you do it yourself, you will underestimate how much it takes to do one thing.
Definitely.
So my favorite example to give people is to watch your favorite TV show and then watch the credits. That's how many people it takes to bring you 22 minutes of television.
Right.
All them people takes all that. It's not even 30 minutes, it's 22 minutes plus commercials.
Right.
So
Exactly.
so that's what I've been doing, is as I've gotten into new things, I've really had to really button down and reorganize so I can be a little bit more efficient.
Okay. And thank you for that, because I understand. I've, like you said, watch your favorite TV show. I hope I'm someone's favorite TV show, and it takes it takes a bit to produce this. Just with us doing it locally and online and talking to people, it's just a lot of work. It's the interviews and it's the edits and it's the finding, the right people to talk to that coincide with the message that we want to deliver. So, and you again, if you're not doing it, you don't have a full team to do it. That's easy, I can do it. But once you start biting biting into it, you're like, okay. Not necessarily more than you
That's
can chew, but it's definitely something. And trying to do multiple things, like being a writer as well. I'm a published author myself, just like you are, and which is why we just created this channel to talk to authors and to so everyone gets that proper proper everyone gets seen. So give us some insight into your book, Diary of a Smart Black Kid, Diary of a Smart Black sixth grade kid.
Smart Black Kid, sixth grade. My book is about a character named Baron Winters, and one of the overall themes is, what do you do if you don't fit in a slot?
Right.
What do you do if you don't fit in a category? Because as African Americans, we know some very unique things. We
Mm-hmm.
know that outside of the African American community, we're looked at as one people,
Mm-hmm.
Black people.
Right.
Inside the African American community, we know that we're individuals just like anybody else, but we're not socialized to have that right or that freedom here. So if you are Italian American or French American or German American, you can be that.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're from Kenya or Ghana or South Africa or even Egypt, you're Black.
Right.
So we know that there are some very unique challenges, and we know that you can get it from both sides. You can have people tell you that you're not Black enough, whatever that
Mm-hmm.
means, and then we know that outside the community, if one of us does something, that's all of us as far as some people are concerned.
Yeah.
We know that everybody's not like that, but we know that if Denzel Washington did it, if Danny Glover did it, if Chris Rock did it, if Flavor Flav did it, it's like we did.
Yep.
When they look at me and you, they're going to see that.
Mm-hmm.
So I asked myself, what do you do if you're a bunch of things that don't fit? What if you're nerdy and geeky, maybe into science, African American, maybe you have that light skin, dark skin thing going on in your family? What do you do if you have a bunch of things and people keep trying to slot you,
Mm-hmm.
but they actually can't fit you in a slot? So that's kind of the genesis of the book. So the character is dealing with all of that, plus everything that comes along with being 12 years old and going into sixth grade, because that's a very pivotal time in life, but it's also very awkward and uncomfortable, and you're transitioning
Right.
from one thing to another.
Yeah, because you're going from just being a small, as you said, kid or child to being you're going through that awkward adolescence phase, and now you're a tween going into teenage years. So, and all those different things that come with just growing up, that starting your coming of age story. So it's a lot of pitfalls that come with that. Just being a child, period, and then being a Black child,
Yes.
or whatever dissension of Black you are. So I definitely see the benefit there and the representation that needs to be there. Is this the beginning of a series, or is this going to be a standalone book?
Oh no, this is definitely the beginning of a series. I've been working on the sequels. I already have a coloring book, so that came out. I'm also working on a leadership manual, because I go into different places. Like I did a presentation in my local library before the pandemic hit,
Mm-hmm.
where we're working with kids and we're going over the concepts in the book, and we're connecting them and using them as life lessons, leadership lessons. How do you deal with bullies? How do you deal with if you're called a name, or are you calling people names? Is that okay? So I've already begun working with young people because that's what your life is like when you're that age. And like you said before, the dilemma of being 12 is that you are not quite a kid and you are not quite grown.
Right.
You're a little bit of each. And then we also know, once again, specific to African Americans, we know that African Americans tend to draw a very strong line between what they call grown folks' business
Mm-hmm.
and not. And so we know that whatever you might be feeling in that slot, a lot of the adults around you will let you know, well, this grown folks' business.
Right. Stay in your place. Stay in your lane.
Right. Stay in your lane. You just, and so different cultures deal with that in different ways. And so I wanted to talk about all that. I wanted to talk about how do we in particular deal with, what happens when you have a son, what happens when you have a daughter and your little man becomes a young man, but he's not a grown man.
Right.
You got to help him transition. And so that's what the book is about, raising those questions, raising those issues, and talking with families, all families, not just Black families, but talking
Mm-hmm.
with families about dealing with those very real issues, because we live in a time where you can't take that for granted anymore.
Right.
There's nothing about if you were blessed in your childhood, you cannot take that for granted and assume that other people have it. If it was your grandmother, if it was your granddad, I had some good, hardworking grandparents. If
Mm-hmm.
it was a religious experience, because we can't even go to church anymore. If it was a school experience, because they're building walls in schools now to protect you from bullets. So
Mm.
they have bulletproof walls now. So in case there's an active shooter, they're doing active shooter drills. So
Wow.
there's nothing you can take for granted.
Absolutely.
So I wanted to raise those questions. I want to have those conversations. I want to cause parents and adults and teachers to think about how we're dealing with our children. What are we putting in their heads? Are we slotting them? Are we, because again, particular to the African American community and the Hispanic community, there's a school to prison pipeline. And that school to prison pipeline you'll become aware of no later than third grade. You are 8 years old, and you will discover that if they label you a problem child as an African American or Hispanic American, they already have a system set up
Wow.
to get you out the mainstream
Right.
and put you in juvie.
Mm-hmm.
Now your whole life is on a different track because maybe you got in a fight or maybe you lost your temper, and now for the next formative years, 12 to 18, everything around you is going to tell you you problem.
Mm-hmm.
So what's going to happen when you turn 18, you get grown, you've been here for 6 or 7 years, you don't fit in the mainstream. See that, that kind of,
Exactly.
we got to deal with that.
We do, and it's crazy. And I don't want to get too far off topic, but I was watching a news story the other day, and it said that something that the government was trying to do, and this sounded absolutely insane to me. They want to take the funding from public schools and put them in private schools. So for
Mhm.
our funding that will go to our children, African American children, Hispanic children, underprivileged children who are already our public schools are underfunded. You want to take that monies and give it to someone who has the privilege and already has the connections, and their life is probably pretty set,
That's right.
but and that's crazy. So definitely those conversations need to happen. These solutions need to be put in place to fix it, and maybe it's something in the school system that, again, when you see that problem child, they need to be cultivated, I think, more than told that they're the problem, and
Yeah,
I've heard that quite a few times going, I was like, well, why are you telling them they're my problem child? Correct them and then put in the necessary steps to cultivate it.
that's right.
Yeah. So I like that. And we talked about it a little bit, but what are some of the messages, not just the messages, but like the answers that you put inside of the book that you hope your readers will attain?
Well, I use quite a bit of humor, so a lot of it is tongue in cheek. The
Mm-hmm.
situations are real, but a lot of it, he's just being funny, the main character in his responses. But we're dealing with bullying, and we're dealing with how do you measure your worth?
Right.
One of the biggest scenes in the book, well, the first scene in the book is he almost gets shot by a cop because he's unlocking his own bike.
Mm.
So he's downtown at a bookstore, at his favorite bookstore, because he reads a lot. He's at the bike rack unlocking his bike, and a cop tells him to get on the ground because the
Wow.
cop assumes you must be stealing that bike.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, so he, like, I had to eat pavement to save my life.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, we know, once again, that you have to prepare your children for that conversation. That is no longer an optional conversation in today's society. I mean, our country is literally on fire for
Yes.
dealing with that type of thing. So, so the question is, how do you deal with that? How do you respond when you're in a situation like that? Another situation, we talked about bullying. Another situation is a big thing is, what table do I sit at the cafeteria? So
Hmm.
that may sound funny, but it slots you in your mind.
Yeah.
So like, do I have to pick between groups?
Mm-hmm. Do I
Do
just
I
sit
have
at the black table? Am I able to sit with the
right?
guys who are nerdy and goofy? Am I able to sit with the people who like anime? So yeah, I can kind of see that.
That right there, you nailed it. What if I'm a creative type?
Mm-hmm.
What if I'm into manga? What if I'm into video games? Like in the book, they play Minecraft a lot. What if I'm thinking about maybe creating? One of my friends actually has a son that's an engineer that actually codes games.
Mm.
So he's actually created his own game, and he has a job producing professional games right out of high school. He's that
Awesome.
good.
Wow.
But that's because my friend, who's a guitar teacher, taught him it's okay to be you.
Right.
If that's what you're into, do that. But when you're in school, you have to make those choices. You have to be like, okay, like you said, do I have the cred to sit at the black table? What does that mean?
Mm-hmm.
You know, am I going to sit with the smart kids? What does that mean? Am I going to be with the debate team or, you know, that different kind of thing? And that, and the funniest thing about that is that that used to be kind of relegated to that age, but now it's in adult life. If you
Mm-hmm.
think about our social media and our politics, now people are choosing sides every day,
Everywhere. Yep.
everywhere. And see, that's where it starts, right about 12. Right about 10, we can all play softball together and don't nobody care.
Mm-hmm.
But right about 12, you have to start making those kind of decisions.
Yeah.
And whoever you don't sit with is going to take that personally and say, okay, well, I guess you dissing
Right.
us, or trying to shade us, and
Mm-hmm. Right.
so
And that's crazy to think about it, but when you think about it, it is like that, especially with us having social media now. Social media, and just like in school, someone told me this: school is to program you, and then social
yeah,
media is a program. So you're looking all day. Children are in school, then they go online and they get on their social medias, and then up until adult life, that's what we do. We are being constantly programmed to say, hey, I agree with this, and this is what I'm going to be seeing because I agree with them. Because social media, Instagram, Facebook, they have the algorithms that said, oh, you like this, so we're going to group you over here with other
yeah,
people who like this, and this is all you're going to see,
yeah,
unless you can, categorize and compartmentalize yourself to get out of that. That is what you're going to see, and that's what is going to make your reality. And that's like mind-blowing to think about how it's just put together. You don't want to, people don't like to talk about it, but it's like you're set up to either be one thing in just that, or you're
yeah.
gonna fail. They
Well,
got to sit you
think
inside the box.
about yourself. Think about all the things you are. You're
Mm-hmm.
African American, you're male, you're a radio personality, you're an entrepreneur. Each one of those groups can have their own parameters. Like
Right.
when you're hanging out with other guys, you're just having guy time, that's one thing. If you're hanging out with entrepreneurs, you have to think a certain way to build a business.
Mm-hmm.
And my father was an entrepreneur. I come from a family of entrepreneurs, and my father always taught me, he said, it's like a marriage. I watched my father work 12 hours a day, 6 days a week, even after he got sick.
Mm.
That's what I was doing when I was 12. Was spending time with my dad, watching him build his business. And he said it takes that kind of dedication and commitment. So each one of the slots of our lives can be kind of like its own circle. And sometimes you can't really have a lot of cross bleed. Sometimes when I'm over here, I have to talk what comes along with this. And I'm sure you've discovered, just being in media, just being a radio personality, just having a show, that comes with expectations, that comes with system setup, that comes with things you have to overcome, assumptions people make about you,
Mm-hmm.
and just so many things that you have to deal with all the time just because of all the things you are. And I'm like, what I'm trying to tell people is that you're supposed to be all those things. The
Right.
human soul is a complex, multifaceted type of thing. And people will keep trying to tell you, well, you're this.
Mm-hmm.
You're this because you're a man, or you're this because you're this age, or you're this because you're black. And I completely disagree with that message. So
Right.
that's the message in my book, that all the things you are, you're supposed to be that. And if people don't get that, that's their problem.
Okay.
I'll give you another personal anecdote very briefly. I'm also, I was a music teacher for many, many years, and I built a very successful private practice. And I taught piano and voice. And I had great relationships with my students. And I had students literally of all ages, as young as they could play, 6, 7, 8, to senior citizens coming back to the piano. Without exception, every single one of my adult students, everyone said they were sorry they stopped playing. They
Mm.
said, David, I'm so sorry I stopped playing my piano. I don't know what to do. And do you know when they stopped? They stopped around 12 or 13.
Mm.
Do you know why they stopped? They stopped because you start getting interested in other things, you start getting interested in relationships, or somebody tells you being a musician isn't cool,
Right.
or you
You
don't
won't
play a
get paid.
cool
You won't.
instrument.
Right. You won't get paid to do that. No one's gonna hire you. Yep. You get
Right.
those
And
messages.
so, but every one of my adult students said they were so sorry they gave up their piano. They had the house, they had the car, they had the kids, they were married, they had a whole nother career, and they said, I'm still sorry. So that's what I mean when I say it's that critical time. So the message of my book is that whatever things you find yourself that's in you, no matter what it is, and no matter what you're candy coating,
Hmm.
go ahead on and be that.
Right.
Yep.
And that's a very positive message, Mr. David, and I thank you for that, because it just, no, my view, I think we all need that sometimes, especially as entrepreneurs, and authors. You need that extra push, like, hey, no, you keep doing what you're doing. If you can see a formidable future with this, even if all you do is take that piano playing that you do, and that's your pastime, that's how you kind of meditate and relax yourself. That's what you're gonna need at 12 years old. But that's what you're gonna need when you're 20 and 30 and 40 and have the house and the car and the marriage and the stress and the bills. So yeah, that's positive. Very positive. Um, you gave us some insight into what your teaching career as a teacher and as a music teacher, and you
Mm-hmm.
briefly touched on producing commercials. But can you touch on that a little bit more, and maybe what your career as a playwright as well?
Okay. One of the plays, I'll do them in reverse order. One of the plays I was involved in was dropped for the first time in 2009. It was called Eye of the Storm. It was a play about a man named Bayard Rustin.
Mm.
That's a name that most people don't know. He was a contemporary of Dr. King. And many of the ideas of the civil rights movement of the 60s came from Bayard Rustin, like the nonviolent protests, which he got from Gandhi when he came back from India, like organizing the March on Washington. He was quite revolutionary in his day, but
Mm-hmm.
he was an ex-convict. He was an ex-communist, if you can believe that. He was gay. He was a musician. He was a whole bunch of things that they told him, you can't be the face of the thing. So that's why we know who Dr. King is, but we don't know who Bayard Rustin is. And Bayard Rustin has 2 high schools in America named after him, if you
Wow.
didn't know that. So that's what I mean when I say, so in it, the playwright that wrote that is a man named McKinley Johnson, and he brought us on as songwriting partners, me and a man named Marshall Titus. So we wrote all that music. We wrote, Lord have mercy, we wrote easily 50, 60 pieces of music. And it was so much fun. And we used so many different styles. And I just love it. I just love it. No limits to your creativity. You can use every type of style of music you know how to write and play. So that was great. And that was just one of the plays I was part of. I was in Guys and Dolls when I was in school. So there's a lot there. In terms of national commercials, I was brought into that by a friend of mine at church. And he heard my music. And McDonald's had said that they wanted something that was kind of stylistically like the kind of music that I did. So he brought me on, and I ended up producing the whole thing. I played guitar on it, sang on the track, and actually produced, everything that was going on there. But to get into something like that, when people ask me, how do you get into something like that? You got to have a demo reel.
Mm.
The grace of God is what got me the job, but I mean, in the natural, that's
Right.
what got me that job. Because when they first talked to me, they said, we need to hear your
Right.
sound. And I said, here you go.
Mm-hmm.
And so they had a lot of samples of my music. That's what got me that job. So that's what I try to tell people, because a lot of people, they say, how do we get into that? How do we break into that? I'm like, you got to have samples of your work, man. You got to have them right here, right now. Now
Right.
I'll get back to you, heave it a hopper. So, yeah,
Yeah, definitely be prepared. Prepared
that's
for
right.
your, because you never know when your blessing may come, and you got to be prepared. So constantly be working on your craft or your skill, and then again you are ready because you were
And
constantly doing it.
I had to use every skill that I had.
Mm-hmm.
As we talked about earlier, producing a commercial is a bunch of different hats at the same time. So I had to use songwriting skill. I had to use my keyboard skill. I had to play the guitar. I sang, but you also have to use your producing skill and using your editing software because we use Pro Tools. And so
Okay.
you got to know what that is. You got to know what you're doing. Just with producing stuff, with your EQs, with your compressions, with your timing, with your syncing to the
Mm-hmm.
video.
Yep.
Obviously, because you want everything so it's online. People can check it out on my website so they can see that particular commercial. But the point I'm trying to make there is that I had to be ready. I had to bring all my skills to the table. I had to have my demo reel ready. And, and then we stayed up many nights till like 2 in the morning. Like we
Right.
start working maybe 6 or 7. I stay up to 2 the next day. That's the thing about studio work. Well, I mean,
Yeah.
but if someone hasn't done it, man, studio work, you better be ready for 8 to 12 hour a day minimum.
Right. Absolutely. studio and stage work as well. So a lot of that in the entertainment and information media realm
Yeah,
is 8-12 hours a day. It's not just the lights and glamour. Okay, turn the mic on, turn the lights up, turn the camera on, let's sing. No, it's a lot that goes on in the background.
that's right. Absolutely.
um, what you said that we can catch your demo reels, and I'm assuming your book's on your website as well.
Yes.
So give
Yes.
that.
My website is davidtaylor2.net. David Taylor and the number two, not the word, David
Okay.
Taylor, the number 2.net. You can find everything there. You can find my books. You can find my music. I have secular music. I have religious music. I have children's books. I have comic books I'm working on. I have novels. So all that's on my website.
You seem to be a non-genre type of person. Like you don't stick to one genre. You say you have comic books, and then you have this children's book, and then you have different vernacular of music.
Right.
How do you categorize it, or how do you stay organized with all of these different ventures that you're studying and that you're going into?
Well, it definitely takes a lot of effort. That's the flip to being a creative person, which once again, you know very well, is the administrative side. And that's another thing that if you've never done it, you underestimate how many jobs you have to do on the business side
Mm-hmm.
just to hold it down.
Right.
And so what I've had to do is, like I told you before, I've had to develop systems to help me process stuff, systems of organization, ways of thinking about things, because uh, you have to figure out which things to job out. Which can I job out, and what do I have to do myself? And
Absolutely.
so when I started doing stuff like that, I started slotting my music. I'm like, is this a commercial piece? Is this background music? Is this more of an R&B thing? Is this something I want to perform, like with a group? So I started slotting it based on where I thought I wanted to use it. But that means you have to go through all your hard drives and you have to organize them with that kind of thing in mind. You can also use Excel spreadsheets,
Mm-hmm.
whatever it is that you like. But you got to have something you can look at to say, where does this go? You know, and then when you start fine tuning, you have to get into things like the length of the piece, like the key, tempo, slash BPM. Did you write it yourself? Did you have writing partners? You have to have all that information readily available. So it takes a strong administrative component to do all that. Are you familiar with something called FILK? F-I-L-K. You
Now,
ever heard of that?
no, I haven't heard of that one.
Okay, FILK is basically music by sci-fi people. People that love fantasy and sci-fi, and they write music about it. And so I have a former student who's a client and a friend who's making a CD based on that kind of music. And so he let me be the primary lyricist on his CD.
Oh.
So I got to write a whole bunch of stuff. And I used Greek mythology. I used just a whole bunch of things. That's a whole different genre.
Mm-hmm.
So I had that organized on my hard drive just with that stuff in it.
Right.
So yeah. So, I mean, I just love so many things, but they're all word based.
Yeah, and I'm glad we're having this conversation because I'm a person that has one of my favorite songs right now is the you heard of the Hamilton play? It's going
Yes,
around, the Disney
absolutely.
play, is the Just You Wait by Hamilton. There's a
Uh-huh.
million things I haven't done, but I want
Okay.
to get to every single one. So that's kind of my theme song right now. It's like, okay, I want to do my show, but I'm also want to produce more books and I want to get to filmmaking and then this and that. And again, meeting a brother like you who's done a lot of this stuff that I want to do is good to see that, and you can do it all, and can do it. You can have it all. It just takes time, learn it, get systems, and put everything in place. What would be with the age we're living in, and I'm sure you've seen the transition because you probably started at a time where social media wasn't the popular way to get in contact with someone. But with
Right.
the age we're living in, and even the old school way, what would be your advice for someone who, okay, I have my demo reels, I've been doing freelancing work, and I got myself together. Now I just need my big break, my big chance. What would be your advice to that person that says when companies and individuals alone are getting so much blasted at them constantly that to
Mhm.
get themselves in the forefront and say, hey, this is me. I'm one of the best there is, and start getting really into the field.
Great question. Okay, always remember this. when you meet someone, you don't just meet them, you meet everybody they know.
Hmm.
So, and you and I meeting each other,
Yep.
our worlds have now connected. Now that everybody that knows you and everybody knows me, they all now have a chance, not just me and you.
Right.
And also, when you burn a bridge, you don't just lose them, you lose everybody they know.
Right.
So the answer to your question is the first thing you need to do is you need to get a professional consultation. That's why I started that service. You need to sit down with somebody that can show you exactly what the specific steps to take are, because a lot of people are just kind of swinging blindly
Right.
and they don't know how to do that thing. And also, when you get a professional consultation, you have access to everybody that they know, because media is built on relationships.
Absolutely.
That people want to say, you know, I want to be here and I want to be there. Well, you're going to meet some people along the way that are the people that help you get there. And why would they open the door for you? And that's normally because you come recommended.
Hmm.
If you're talking about a cold call to people that don't know you at all, normally it's a warm handoff. It's, hey, you know, hey, do you know my friend or so and so? They'll give you time because you came recommended from somebody that they know, as
Right.
opposed to having to do that hard thing of don't nobody know who I am. So I just got to keep hitting and keep hitting and keep hitting and hoping they see me is a harder path. And if you think about it, that's about 1 to 2 people a year.
Hmm.
There's about 1 to 2 people a year, probably on YouTube or Instagram, that blows up so hard that everybody knows who they are. But that's 1 to 2 people, maybe a year, maybe.
Right.
You want to get on that fast track, if you want to get in that slot where everybody knows who you are and you're connecting with the right people, you have to have a professional consultation. You got to sit down with somebody like me or somebody that knows what they're talking about, somebody that has those connections, somebody that's done that legwork, and then they can help you map out a strategy. It'll save you 20 years. 20 years of struggling. It'll be 20, 40 before you get a breakthrough on your own. But spend an hour in a professional consultation and you get there before this year is out.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah. Yes, sir. And I definitely agree with that, because that reminds me of a that "Wake Up Everybody" song, and the remix I think that John Legend and a couple of other artists did. And in the song they say it's gonna take the wisdom of the elderly, so somebody who's done it, like you said, the consultations, but it's gonna take the energy of the youth. In so many words, that's what they said.
Yeah.
So to keep yourself going and get your big break, sit down with someone who's done it, who knows what they're doing, who's done the legwork and had the meetings, and get that bridge, because now you're meeting everybody they know, and then you have that energy. Maybe you have a small team behind you, and there you got a couple guys working with you, and we can all work together. So thank you, sir. Again, I appreciate this conversation. I appreciate you taking the time out to talk to us. We're not washing you off by any means, but I know you have some things you say you have to get to today. So if there's anything you'd like to share with us, please feel free.
Well, again, I want to thank you for having me. I really appreciate, love talking to authors, entrepreneurs, people that are building something, because what I would say is that that is the way forward. What we have discovered in the last 3 months is that entrepreneurship is the only thing that endures every season.
Yes.
There's no season of your life where building a business is wrong or bad.
Right.
And when you get in a situation like we're in now with a global pandemic, you have to depend on what you have in your hand.
Mm-hmm.
You have to depend on what it is that you can do. So that's why I'm always trying to encourage that. And the other thing I would say to people is not something trite. People say trite, cliche things like dream big. That's not what I mean. What I mean is don't be afraid of what you find when you imagine.
Okay.
A lot of people imagine stuff and then they say, oh, no, I couldn't do that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, a lot of people say, well, you know, nobody's ever done that before. I'm like, that means you're supposed to do it.
Right.
That's a prime opportunity. And I'll use some very cliche terms and I'll explain the difference. Okay. A lot of people have called themselves trailblazers. Yeah. Most trailblazers die. Most trailblazers die before they get through the jungle.
Wow.
So there's the tigers over here and they caught that one. So here comes another trailblazer and he sees the skeleton. So he misses the tigers, but he gets caught in the quicksand.
Right.
So he's in the quicksand. So here comes another one and he sees the tigers, he sees the quicksand, he didn't see the snake.
Mm.
Most trailblazers die. What happens is, after all the people have died, somebody comes through that sees all the traps and avoids the traps based on all them corpses and skeletons. They make it through to the other side, and then they're called a pioneer. Then once the pioneers have made it through, then they bring everybody else once they've made it safe.
Right.
So that's why you got to be careful calling yourself a trailblazer. You got to be careful. You got to understand what that really means. If you are truly doing something that's never been done before, you face the most danger. So you got to be up for that. That's what I mean when I say don't be afraid. Because you're going to see things that people haven't done. You're going to face new dangers, new stuff for the first time. And most people aren't going to do that. But if you know that's who you are, you know that's who you are, don't be afraid. Get your lightsaber, get your machete, get your whatever you got, and blaze that trail. Deal with the snakes and the quicksand and the tigers. And if you make it through to the other side, not only will you be a trailblazer, you'll be a pioneer. You're the first one that did that thing. See what I mean? But that takes a lot of courage. And that takes a lot of strength. And for me personally, that's where my faith comes in, because when your strength runs out, that's when God gives you his strength. But don't be afraid. Whatever it is that you see, don't be afraid. If it's something that's never been done, never been thought of, that's how we get inventions. That's how you get patents. That's how we got every invention that we have. You know, like the super soaker was invented by a black man.
Right.
You know, that kind of thing. That's because he saw something nobody else saw, and he built something nobody else built. That kind of thing. So don't be afraid of that. That's what I'm trying to encourage in people. Don't be afraid of it. It might sound crazy, might look crazy. That's just because it doesn't exist out here yet. It's just still in here. But with faith and work, you can bring it out here. You can give birth to that baby, and you will find no greater joy in life.
Wow.
But it's dangerous. So gear up for that.
All right. Yes, sir. I agree with that. And with that, I'll let you go, sir. One more time, can you tell us who you are, the name of your book, and your website, and can you tell the people what they're watching?
All right. My name is David Taylor II. You can find me at davidtaylor2.net. My book is Diary of a Smart Black Kid, 6th grade. I'm in Chicago, Illinois, and you're watching Live in the D with Mr. BB.
All right. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
This week's quote on Live in the D with Mr. BB is, "Every accomplishment starts with a decision to try." Once again, this week's quote on Live in the D with Mr. BB is, "Every accomplishment starts with a decision to try."
Time for Live in the D with Mr. BB's weekly question. We ask, you answer. And here are this week's answer. The question, what are your safe social distancing activities? The answers, we plan to have a Paint the Park Pillow Paint Party September 12th, 2020. Oh, that sounds intriguing, and as long as you're social distancing, it can be very safe and calming and relaxing. Boxing on the Wii. Okay, great exercise, and you're definitely social distancing since you're only boxing the computer or someone virtually. Virtual Zumba classes. Ah, yes, virtual Zumba classes, great way to stay in shape and keep social distancing, virtually getting your exercise while staying safe. You can get those virtual Zumba classes with Penny Love Fitness. All right, this has been Live in the D with Mr. BB's weekly question. We ask, you answer, and those are this week's answers. Remember, we ask a question every week, so be sure to look out for our question every Wednesday. Bye-bye. Live.
You are live with the D with Mr. BB.
BB
Mr. BB.
with Mr. BB.
Hey.